for anticipating problems before they happen, and actually worked on thinking about pandemic response in Israel before this pandemic. So with that, let me give it to Meir to talk about the current situation in Israel and their response to Omicron. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. And Yanir, I want to thank Yanir for helping a lot with advising the government and different ministers in Israel with regards to coronavirus policy, and teaching me many things from the scientific language, and taking into considerations many aspects that I overlooked. So in the last conversation, I warned that there is a huge danger of variants going out of Africa because of the amount of people with immune compromise in Africa, because of HIV and hepatitis C and some other sicknesses. And apparently, Omicron probably came from an immune-compromised person. There's another theory, reverse zoonosis, that a human infected an animal, and then the virus circulated within the animal population and then jumped back to humans. We don't know yet. There are ways like this to each direction, but it's probably an immune-compromised person. Now, researchers in California, they looked at a woman, HIV-positive woman, 61 years old. She got infected with coronavirus. She showed almost no symptoms at the start. After 15 days, they took a sample and they sequenced it, and they found that she created a new variant. After 30 days, they took another sample, and they found a whole different variant, like that created on the basis of the first variant. She was still infectious, the woman. She already showed symptoms. She was hospitalized. So they basically proved that an HIV which is compromised can create at least two variants within the course of 1 month. Now, in Africa, over 90% of the kids that are HIV positive are in the African continent. And they have over 20 million people that are HIV positive. 20 million. Now, you can imagine the amount of people that got infected during the Delta wave and Alpha wave in Africa. They also had Beta, who was widely circulated. So the chances of a new variant besides Omicron coming out of Africa is very high. Now, it means that all countries need to protect the immune-compromised people. We need to help them, protect them better than from infection. Maybe supply them with free masks, help them isolate if they need, if they already got infected. Maybe create different rules for contacts of people that are immune compromised. For example, to quarantine not only the first circle around them, but also the second circle, contacts of immune compromised people. We should protect better hospitals. It's very beneficial to install HEPA filters in hospitals because they help with regards to all other infectious to bacteria and everything. So we should do this as well because many immune compromised people are meeting in hospitals. It's very silly to create such incubation grounds for variants everywhere. But all in all, I think that what Omicron is teaching us are two things. First is the importance of continuous control of the borders, because we see that there are basically 2 or 3 countries that are not excited at all about Omicron. This is Taiwan, New Zealand, maybe China, some other places that control the border constantly from the first days of the pandemic up till now. If you control your border against people that are carriers of corona, you control all variants besides like ones that will actually change the incubation time or things that didn't really happen yet in a serious way. If you control your borders well, until your whole population have a chance to vaccinate, and New Zealand is pretty close to this goal. And then you actually won the pandemic, because we assume that from now on, every time that a new variant will show, we will be able to create a new vaccine within like 100 days. So and if current vaccines will retain at least some protection for the duration between the recognition of the new variant to the time that new vaccines are available, then if your whole population is already vaccinated for the other variants, then you're pretty safe. You have some sort of safety emerging to allow for a free movement between your countries and your country and other countries. And then if something arises, then you react to it. So in Israel, I was trying to raise the issue of the border control for a while, with some success. We already had some testing. Everybody was required to take a PCR test 72 hours before boarding, another one after landing, and anybody who wasn't fully vaccinated or recovered had to isolate for 7 days after landing. And it was very basic. I told them that we are trying to capture mosquitoes with bars, but it's better than nothing. And then when on November 24, I've seen the original tweet by Tom Peacock that he found some like weird variant coming out of Africa, and I warned the government in Israel. And on the 25, it took them less than 24 hours to understand that there is a deletion in S, and that we can recognize deletion in S the way we did with Alpha, who also had a deletion in S. So we changed all of the tests at the border, changed within 24 hours to the kind of tests that can recognize a deletion in S. What we did was that every positive, we checked like the regular way, and every positive test was tested again with the special kits that can recognize a deletion in S. And this way we were able to screen for Omicron right away. Within 24 hours, we were able to screen 100% of the people entering into the country, to screen them from Omicron. And then at the 26th of November, like 24 hours later, Israel was the first country in the world to put the south part of the continent of Africa on a red list. I think we put on a red list 8 countries, including South Africa. And then another 24 hours, and we put on the red list 50 countries in Africa, because we understood that Omicron is probably widely circulated there. And we have seen the rate of growth in South Africa, and we understood that it's like doubling time is so fast that it's impossible that it's not like widely spread in South Africa. On the 28th, we already understood that we probably have some seriously suspected cases, and we already had very few confirmed cases on the border that were supposed to be quarantined. We used our security services to locate a person that were missing, that were not like quarantined according to the regulation. And thanks to these special tools, we found out that the person told us that he was taking a bus, the longest bus ride in Israel. It's a 5 hours ride from Tel Aviv to Eilat. The person that was supposed to quarantine, who was like a foreign worker, she said that she was taking the bus at a certain time, and it wasn't true. They were already put into quarantine. Some of them were already overseas. They were put in quarantine overseas. But then security services found out that she was riding a different bus in another day. Without using this tool, we were keeping like 50 people in quarantine for the wrong people, and allowing the other 50s to roam the streets. On the 29th, after another 24 hours, we put a restriction, no more than 50 people in a closed space, unless everybody is either fully vaccinated or got a test in the last 24 hours. And we also banned the entry to Israel of any foreigners. No foreigners, only Israelis are allowed to enter Israel right now. And they all need to isolate now. It doesn't matter fully vaccinated, not fully vaccinated, recovered. They need to isolate for at least either 3 days, or getting a negative test after landing, besides the negative test before 72 hours before boarding. And anybody who came from a red list, Israeli citizen that came from a red listed country, is going to a government quarantine like facility. So it's worked for a while, and even though that it wasn't enough, but now because of the sheer amount of Omicron cases in the UK, I understand from Saeed Javid today that we've seen in the next 2 days. He anticipates that the majority of cases in the London area will be already Omicron, and they assume that there are about 200,000 Omicron infectious in the UK right now daily. So we put the UK on the red list, but it will only be in effect from Saturday, from Tuesday, from like Tuesday night maybe. So we probably already have few cases of Omicron in the community inside Israel, and that means that we will need some serious measure to contain it, because we see that in Scotland, for example, from the first detected like Omicron cases, less than 1% of the positive cases, to Omicron becoming dominant, less than 2 weeks, double in time, 2 and something days. And we also see UK in the London area, double in time is 2 to 3 days. In Ontario, in Canada, double in time, 2 to 3 days. We see also Denmark, Omicron is about to be dominant, more than 50% of the cases in about 2 days. Double in time, 2 to 3 days. And all of this in front of Delta wave. We see that in the UK, for example, they had like 40, 50,000 positive cases daily, which is very high, and still Omicron is taking over. Scotland also, they had the biggest outbreaks they had, with like about 3,000, 4,000 cases a day. And then again, Omicron is taking over very fast in front of Delta. So we assume now in Israel that green passport, and by the way, Israel was the first country in the world to use green passports as vaccination passports. We assume now that the green passport will not work well against Omicron, because Omicron is very infectious for fully vaccinated and for people that are recovered. I think we rely here on UK data, and I want to thank the UK government for making the UK a coronavirus laboratory. You have the best scientists in the world. They publish well, they publish fast, they write in excellent English, they make amazing documents, seriously, and give incredible predictions. And then the UK government is basically doing nothing for a while. And then you can see, because it's very rare that people giving predictions and nobody is doing anything about the predictions. So it's pretty hard to tell if an economist, when he predicts that there will be inflation, very high one, and then the government acts. So many times there isn't. You can't see the inflation coming because actions were taken. In the UK, they work hard not to do enough. And then we can learn what happens when you don't do enough, and see that the scientists were right time and again, SEG and INDISEG. And it's sad to see, but they say that the household attack rate for Omicron is 3 times Delta. And this is very bad, especially for Israel. We have the highest household, the biggest households in the developed world. We have more than 3 kids per family on average, and anything that got high attack rate in households is very bad for Israel. And we also assume that our tools will work less well, especially the green passport. So we will probably need to limit gatherings in a very serious way. Maybe to 100 people, doesn't matter, inside, outside, no more than a group of 100 people together. We will need to see exactly what to do. We also started vaccinated kids 5 to 11. We already, okay. Israel started vaccinated, second country in the probably third country in the world to start vaccinating, mass vaccination. And we've been the first to reach over 50% of population fully vaccinated, but now we are lagging behind. We only have 62.7% of the population fully vaccinated, at least 2 doses. We already had to give many people a booster because we started early, so their protection already vain. But now we started vaccinating, so we gave boosters. We were the first in the world to give booster, to give the third dose, and we give it to any kid 12 and up. Anybody 12 and up can get a third dose. 5 months after the second one. And now we reduced this to 3 months after the second dose. And also, we just started vaccinated kids 5 to 11. Now, we try to do this as fast as possible. We had a major problem with the Minister of Education who do not want to vaccinate kids. It was like a serious news in Israel now, because she fired the executive director of the Ministry of Education who wanted to vaccinate kids in school. Anyway, we vaccinate now kids in school. What we do is schools can sign the parents that they want the kids to be vaccinated, and once they collect more than 40 kids want to get vaccinated, a special car is coming and vaccinating everybody. And if the parents want to join in, they can get their dose, and whatever, anybody around who wants to also get a chance to get vaccinated can jump in and get, of course, an adult dose. So it just started yesterday. Sadly, we vaccinated kids before that. My kid is 6 years old. He's supposed to get his second dose in 2 days, but we only now started to vaccinate them seriously. So we will try to fasten this as fast as possible. So as many kids as possible will be fully protected with first 2 doses before Omicron is like getting around in the community in Israel.
Meir?
Yes.
Could I ask you a quick question? The first death from Omicron was in UK today. Do we know if that was a vaccinated person? And do we think that the booster shot is going to help us protect against Omicron? Or do we know too little yet?
The UK only given with regards to the hospitalized people and the deaths, they only given like a group information. They said that it's people 18 to something, that the youngest one is 18, hospitalized with Omicron is 18, that most of them are vaccinated, but they didn't say if vaccinated twice or 3 times. And I don't know about the one death. I didn't see anywhere what was his vaccine status, but it's very important to be very careful, because maybe this one specific person was got immune suppression. Maybe he was very sick from something else. Small numbers are very misleading, extremely misleading. So if I see one case of a kid that his nervous system got infected with coronavirus, that's a very serious warning. I take this antidote and I treat this antidote very, very extremely seriously, even if it's only one case. But if I see a fully vaccinated person dying, I don't take it as something that means that Omicron can kill like all fully vaccinated. It not necessarily the case, because in Israel, for example, we had many people who was fully vaccinated 3 times, triple times with Pfizer, but still died of Delta. Okay, we had some days of the fourth wave in Israel. We have seen like a few deaths like this of people like this, because they were very old, very frail, and maybe they got a very big infection dose from somebody in their like close contacts that infected them with huge amounts of Delta for like few days. We don't know. But of course, even fully vaccinated people can die, and I really don't want anybody to get infected. Doesn't matter how vaccinated he is. But from the first day of the pandemic till today, it's better to be vaccinated with any vaccine approved in the West against any variant than to not be vaccinated against the mildest variant that you can find out there. I'd rather be vaccinated with AstraZeneca against like Omicron than not be vaccinated against wild type. Okay, so it's really, and the immune system is so complicated. We don't really understand many aspects of it. It's second only to the brain. That I only learned this during the pandemic. It's incredibly complicated system. What we know from other sicknesses is that people that were vaccinated are less prone to long-term consequences, even when they get sick. And in general, sometimes they have some sorts of protection, even when you can't see it from them getting infected or infecting others. They get some protection that is a core of the value of the vaccine, and not only like against symptoms that you show, but against the deeper damage that can be caused. So I highly recommend to anybody in Israel. We recommend everybody to get vaccinated as fast as possible. If he's already 3 months out of his second dose, and more than 12 years old to also get a booster, to get the third dose. And we already ordered a lot of the medicines that are now on the shelves. Some antibodies that were proven to be effective, not proven, but considered to keep their effectiveness even against Omicron. We are trying to guarantee a delivery of Pfizer Paxlovid, the new medicine that's supposed to reduce hospitalizations. So once it will be approved, we'll be able to use it. We gave Regeneron to hundreds of people in Israel. Actually, we offer it to anybody who fits the clinical accommodation, and anybody can choose if they want to get it or not. But Regeneron apparently will not be effective against Omicron, so we will need to find something else. But in general, we understand now that what we will need to do really is back to basic. Omicron and other variants there are variants that can overpass your vaccine, but there is no variant that can overpass a HEPA filter or a very well fitting N95 mask. They can't do that. Okay. Oh, and I can't infect any of you during this conversation. I just can't. It doesn't matter how infectious is the variant that may be harboring. I can't infect you guys. So reducing the connection between people will reduce infections. Using better fitted N95 masks will reduce infections and infection dose, which is also anybody who ever dealt with viruses in animals knows that the infection dose matter a lot. If you give more virus, more sickness. Less virus, usually less sickness on a big group. Or at least less severe, less fast, whatever. So when you wear a well-fitted mask, even if you will get infected, you will probably you will have a better chance. Your immune system, your vaccine will have a better chance to hold against your infection. So we need to use HEPA filters to reduce the amount of virus in the air. We need to move as much as possible to the open air, because less the infectious dose will be smaller, and many people will be spared. We need to use better fitted masks because it's hot. We need to reduce the amount of people that come together in one place. And I truly believe that if we manage to go back to basic well enough, to keep our distance, to clean the air, to wear well-fitted masks, then we will stand a chance to delay Omicron. We will not be able to stop Omicron because it's too infectious. But we will stand a chance to delay Omicron enough so we will not have a wild wave, out of control wave that will infect all of the kids that will not get vaccinated yet, just like days before they can get the vaccine. So our goal in Israel right now is to manage to vaccinate as many kids as possible for the first time, and many adults to give them booster if they didn't get it yet, and to best protect the most vulnerable, the immune compromised, the babies. We know that South Africa, as I said, that they've seen a rise of hospitalizations of severe sickness in babies, especially up to 1 year old. The Minister of Health from South Africa said that it seems like Omicron hitting them, creating a more severe sickness in babies up to 1 year old. We also see hospitalization data from there that in 1 week, 100 babies up to 1 year old were hospitalized, while no other group passed the barrier of 50%. When you run the groups per age, in 1 year incrementals, so babies up till 1 year, 100 got hospitalized. No other group, doesn't matter how old, had more than 50 in 1 week. And it was rare. It was they had many more young people hospitalized compared to the other variants in the first few weeks of Omicron than in the other waves. So we have a reason to suspect that Omicron will be worse for very young children. And that's exactly the groups that we do not have a vaccine for yet, because we can only vaccinate kids 5 and up in Israel at least. So we try to find ways to protect these kids. For example, everybody working in schools in Israel or kindergartens have to have a green passport, either fully vaccinated or to test all the time. We also do something that is called education protection. It's a program when we do PCR pooling tests weekly in many schools, in hundreds of schools in Israel, and now we are about to get it much wider, and maybe in the next few weeks to even widen it to the whole of Israel. So all schools will get tested weekly, PCR in pooled PCR weekly. In my kids' school, for example, such a program already exists. And this way, even Omicron, if you capture the person on a PCR, if you test everybody daily, once a week with PCR, and PCR can capture a carrier 3 days before he's becoming infectious, you stand a pretty good chance to stop a chain of transmission before it started, or just when people actually after the first round, before the second round is getting infected. And we test a lot in a country with less than 10 million people. We test we usually have between 80 to 100,000 tests a day. So we test every day. We test 1 in 100, 1% of the population every day. It's pretty good. Now there are some countries in the world that test more. Denmark, for example, that test about 4% of the population every day, which is incredible. I really hope that we will be able to get to this standard. But even what we do now, it's good. So I think that the most, besides like talking about Omicron, I think that the most important part in this pandemic, we were looking at the virus and how it's changing and how we should handle the virus. I think that it's all about people. It's not the virus. The virus is not a problem. People are the problem. Because we have seen this, that when people didn't have hubris, or when people understood the risk well, they took action and they managed to control the virus. In the first round, and in the second round, and in the third round, we had clear winners, that countries that acted fast and controlled the borders and took seriously every infection seriously and tried to control to protect the people and not the economy and not the hospitals, but the people, trying to protect people from a virus. It's a very simple and powerful message that only very few countries try to cherish. And I think that if we as people will decide that we do not accept that, we do not accept a single person getting infected with a deadly virus, if we can prevent us as a society, if we can prevent us, then we'll be able to control even the worst kinds of variants that will come upon us. And I assume that we didn't see the list of coronavirus yet. Why I say that? Because we have seen that around May 2020, we had the mutation D641G. It was a mutation that was more transmissible, and it's got to world dominance within like few weeks from the first sequence. So that was May 2020. And then on December 2020, we had Alpha becoming dominant in the whole world. And then on May 2021, we had Delta. And now on December 2021, we have Omicron. Do you see a pattern here? May, December, okay? So nobody promising us that we may not see a dominant, very bad variant coming out in the next few days maybe, besides Omicron. Nobody promising that. But I'm telling you that if we will not have a worse variant than Omicron by May 2022, I will be surprised, okay? Because it's surprising, because we pretty much allowed like billions of people to get infected, and many of them are immune compromised. And we also managed to infect so many kinds of animals that it's incredible. We infected hippos, we infected snow leopards, tigresses, gorillas, mice, which was not supposed to happen. You know, we had when we did like research in mice for coronavirus, we had to create special kind of mice that show human ACE2 cells to be able to get infected. But now we find out that there are some mice that got infected from a specific variant without these changes. So we managed to let the coronavirus circulate so badly that it can actually infect mice in the wild without special changes. And we infected so many other animals. Some of them also infected us back. Okay, we had this in Denmark and in Norway, in other places, with the huge like farming, where animals infected the humans back. So or white-tailed deer in the US, there are some populations that, according to a survey, 70 or 80% of them they are seropositive of deer. They got infected in open air, probably, okay, because they're not used to gathering in closed spaces. So we infect these animals, they become sick, they create variants, and they may either die or suffer a lot of consequences that we are not clear yet, just like humans die and suffer a lot of consequences that part of them are not clear yet. And they may circulate the corona in the wild until it's coming back to us at some point in the future. So I think that we created a huge disaster here that it's up to us to try to amend if we want to leave the world to our kids better than the way we got it. So I think that once we decide that we aspire to prevent infections, that's not what we want to do. Before you are trying to calculate the cost of infection or to see how you can prevent it best and what to measure like as a value of human life. Let's say we can't just look everybody in barrels dependent on each other and just communicate through cell phones. Humans need humans, but that's exactly why you need to control the borders. You create, and this is unitary, you create a green bubble. You protect the borders of the green bubble, and then you extend and connect between the green bubbles until you cover as much as possible of the world in a protected way. So it sounds weird, but we already do this for tuberculosis, for example. I guess the ones of you that are coming from developed countries, we probably never met a tuberculosis positive person, okay? Or they don't really worried. You are not really worried about hepatitis C. It's not a serious part of your life. Not tuberculosis and not hepatitis C. But in Egypt, for example, 7% of population is hepatitis C positive. 7%. And there are countries in the world that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60% of population are tuberculosis positive. They are carrier of tuberculosis. And it happens. Now, the fact that these sicknesses are not widely circulating in a developed world is because we control the borders. Anybody coming into Israel from a country where hepatitis C is widely spread need to be tested for hepatitis C. Anybody who coming from a country with a lot of tuberculosis need to be tested for tuberculosis before he is allowed to move around like freely. And usually people don't feel this because most of them are not coming from a place that have a lot of these sicknesses. And if they are, so they know the sickness, they take it seriously because they see what it's doing to people. So I assume that coronavirus will turn into a third world problem during 2022-2023, circulate, like creating sickness, major waves of sickness and deaths, mostly in third world countries or underdeveloped countries, but it will be a global problem. The fact that there are many HIV carriers in the continent of Africa were overlooked for many years by the West, by many countries in the developed world, not all of them, and many people, because it's far away problem. But now with the coronavirus circulating around these immune compromised people, creating variants that come back to bite us, it's a very serious problem that we need to address right now as a global community. So there is a saying that nobody is safe until everybody is safe. It's not necessarily true in the simple sense, but we cannot handle locally something that is a global problem, because all of us, just like humans want to meet each other, countries want to interact with each other. And you cannot be safer than the countries that is least safe in your continent. For example, look at Australia. Some parts of Australia are very careful with coronavirus, some parts are less careful, and the drags the others down. Or Canada, for example, some parts of Canada are very careful, other parts are less careful, and the parts that are less careful drag everybody down. So you need to find a way. We need to find a global way to reduce circulation of coronavirus, to reduce the pace of creation of new variants, and to be able to raise like effective border control very fast, to get an alarm very fast when something is erupting, and to get border controls in place when something is erupting, and also think about the next pandemics. When you put a HEPA filter, I advocate for a HEPA filter in every public space in Israel right now, to do it right now as fast as possible. And I tell the Prime Minister and the ministers and everybody, listen, a HEPA filter is not there only for coronavirus. It will also reduce RSV and flu and measles and bacteria and allergies and dust and many other things that are bad for humans. I mean, it's basically, we prefer to breathe the clean air. It's a good thing to do in general. We will never be sad of cleaning the air, of breathing better air, just the way we are not sad of drinking better water. Okay? It's a very good investment that we need to do permanently. The coronavirus teaches us that we don't want to breathe contaminated air. We want clean air everywhere. So this is one thing that we can do now, for example. And another thing is the use of genome sequencing and the use of tests to control viruses. So, for example, I believe that we should change the coronavirus tests to also control other viruses. It should also check for cold viruses. It should also check for flu and for many other things. And when a person passes from a country to country, he will be tested for all sorts of viruses, screened for all sorts of viruses, not only for coronavirus. And this way we will be protected against many different things. We will keep the circulation down. We will keep our health system better prepared and with more capacity for any emergency, because we will able to keep the major sicknesses, to keep the levels down. And also there is a hope in the horizon. Because there is a very serious possibility for the development of a pan-coronavirus vaccine, for all corona vaccine, one that will be that will not be susceptible for variants. And once we will have such a vaccine, it will be much easier to convince even the poorest countries and even the most skeptical people to take this vaccine. Because such a vaccine, if the safety profile will be good enough, and people in the third world will see that people in the first world are taking it en masse, almost all of them, then they will want it. And it's much easier to find a donor for something that holds than a donor for something that wanes after like 5 to 6 months. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, a question. You're doing all these amazing things in Israel, like the installation of the HEPA filters. Are you doing it from a humanitarian point of view, or are you doing it because you're actually saving costs in the long run, because you're not having so many people in hospital and all of those costs, plus the suffering and loss of life? Do you understand?
No, everything I advocate for, I do it because I don't want people to get infected by a deadly virus. Not Israelis, not anybody. Not my child, and not anybody child, and not everybody parent or grandfather. It doesn't matter. Now, looking at this, now it's time to when we try to protect human life, we always look at the cost. Anybody who's saying otherwise is either like a child or lying. Okay, when we try to protect the life of soldiers, we calculate also the cost of protection of the life of a soldier, because it needs to be cost effective. The rate need to be, and besides we need many other things. So my point is that once you first start from the moral ground. What do you want to do? And what I want to do is to protect people from getting sick. That's what I want to do. Now, when I'm trying to see what's the most effective way to do that, the ones that will reach the highest level of success first. And then after I arrange the different tactics, I look at what tactics will give me the best ROI, the best return on investment. For example, with the same amount of money, I can test this whole class once a week for a month. I can install one HEPA filter, or I can buy everybody N95 masks for the use for 3 months, to use every day for 3 months. And I know that only 60% of them will actually use a mask to wear. Okay? So what's the best method that will save me this? Or maybe I do better, just do a mix of it. If I know that only few of the kids will actually use a mask, I can only give 10 masks to the whole class and know that the kids that will use them will take them. And I can install a smaller HEPA filter, but still have some. So it's a balance of resources and effectiveness. And I also advocate for many layers. It's meaning that I don't want to put all of the money on one thing because maybe it will fail. And then I don't want to put all the money in vaccines because maybe I will have a variant that can go around the vaccines. I don't want to put everybody on HEPA filter and everything on HEPA filters because maybe I will find out that it's amazing that I got HEPA filter in every class, but the kids are getting infected on the way to school when they are taking the bus. Okay, so it's like creating, and I don't want to do, and if I do only tests, so I will find the kids that are positive, but they are not protected because they are not vaccinated. So I want many layers on top of each other. I want to have masks. I want a HEPA filter. I want to have tests. I want a vaccine. And if somebody already got infected after I did all this effort, I want to have the best medicines available, and I want to have the best medical care available, and I want these parents to know about the long COVID symptoms, so they will be able to recognize a case of PIMS-DS or MIS-C on time, and that the doctors will know how to treat it on time. So the more, so I go back again. It's all about people. It's all about like your goal and your moral ground, and people understanding what you are trying to achieve and why you are trying to achieve it. And it's all about like starting from the basic. The basic thing, if you don't want to get infected with coronavirus and now it's an emergency, the basic thing is to try to limit the interactions between people, physical interactions between people, especially in closed spaces. That's a basic thing. We know humanity knows that for so many years. Even open the Bible and you see that people that got infected with something that can infect others, they need to live out of the campground. It's in the Bible. It was thousands of years ago. They already knew that they want to keep infected people out of the grounds. They're not allowed to eat with other people. They're not allowed to sleep in the same room with other people. They need to be outside of the walls. Okay, so this is a very old technique, and it's worked. Or in Judaism, you need to wash your hands before you eat. You know that? And a woman need to shower her whole body at least once a month, at least. Okay, so it's like it's rules that it's supposed to keep you healthy. So basic, you start from the basic. Everybody can understand it, that the cleaner air is better. Everybody can understand that if you try to limit gatherings, and you're not starting to say that if it's a music show, then it's X. If it's just a dancing party, then it's Y. Or like I've seen a joke about the UK. They said like a year ago, it was legal to be in the office, but illegal to have a house party for Christmas. But this year, it's illegal to be it's not recommended to be in the office, but you can do a house party on Christmas. You can't, people will not trust you when you zigzag between like cases, and people do not understand why you can pray, why 20 people can pray, but 15 people cannot do yoga together. It doesn't make any sense from an epidemiological point of view. It doesn't make any sense. So you can't make everybody happy unless the rules are very simple and grounded very well in the epidemiological aspects of the specific virus or things that you are fighting against. So we need to go from the basic up. We need to minimize the interactions between people until we know better, until we vaccinate everybody, until we understand the long-term aspects of coronavirus. So of course, once my whole family will be fully vaccinated, I will change the way my risk management in a very serious way, in a magnitude. Okay, I will send my kids to school once they're fully vaccinated, even if they may get exposed to coronavirus, even if they may show symptoms after getting infected, because it's different. Now I'm less worried about the long-term effects, and it's based in the science. But I will still try to prevent them from getting infected in every possible way I have that I can use, because a person that was not infected, maybe it doesn't matter. You invested time, you invested effort, you missed on life opportunities, you didn't travel the way you wanted, you didn't interact with people the way you wanted, but we only get forward. Look at New Zealand. They only had 44, they lost only 44 people to coronavirus in almost 2 years. They had less, they had like a less lockdowns for the whole country for a shorter period than Israel, who lost over 8,000 people to coronavirus, and they managed to get the people to the vaccine. Now look at your family, look around you, look at your community. The less interactions you have now, the better you clean your air, the better you protect people with vaccines and well-fitted masks, the higher the chance that you will get, like in one piece, to better vaccines, to better medicines. We already have Paxlovid, for example. It's a miracle. It's according to the clinical test, it's reducing severity by 80%. The occurrence of severe, like your chances of getting severe by 80%. It's incredible. You can save so much time on us by using this once it will be approved, and it will probably be approved in Europe in the next few weeks. So anybody who managed to not to get infected up till now have an amazing chance of staying alive, even if he got infected after he got fully vaccinated. So coronavirus will probably become a preventable and treatable disease in the developed world during 2022. Up till then, we need to do everything in our power to make a better infrastructure locally and internationally, and to guard as many people as possible from getting infected before they have a chance to get fully vaccinated. And then we need to try to mitigate the risk, not only of coronavirus but of all viruses and sicknesses. And also we will have this amazing burden of supporting the people that have long COVID. And I think we don't understand this yet, but this is a huge iceberg, huge under the sea of what we can see now. Because many kids, for example, they do not understand what happened to them. Like a kid that used to ride his bicycles like happily and easily, and now it's hard for him because his balance is like a bit off. Or a kid that used to love like eating and making food and doing things, and now is like taste and smell are off. We will see the burden in the next like few years. It will be huge. We already see this in the UK, for example. Actually have a very, very good information with regards to long COVID, because ONS having like special groups that answer questionnaires every once in a while, every like 3 months. They assume that over 1.2 million people in the UK are living with long COVID symptoms right now.
How much do you see of, two quick questions. One of how much long COVID do you see in Israel? And two, will it get to a point where you actually say, once we get to this level, we're going to close schools?
So first of all, we have a lot of long COVID in Israel, a lot, because we have only 3 million kids in Israel, and 550,000 of them were PCR positive. It means that much more got infected, probably over 1 million. So, and we see a lot of long COVID in Israel. We have like special centers for long COVID in kids and in adults, and many like sad stories. But Israel is not a good research ground for this for some reasons. The UK, for example, is getting a much better information, much better science done with regards to long COVID in Israel. With regard to school closing, I think that right now we're doing anything to protect kids until they have the chance to get fully vaccinated. pretty much anything. If it's up to me, they can stay at home, I don't know, whatever, until they're fully vaccinated, and just then they can go back around society like freely. Because the vaccines are here and Omicron is on the door. And if Omicron we get to the kids populations that are suspectable, the ones that were not even vaccinated yet, with doubling time of 2 to 3 days, oh my God, that's a tragedy. Just before they can get vaccinated, that's a tragedy, even if it's milder, much milder than Delta. And I don't believe that it's much milder than Delta, because basically, like with a doubling time of 2 to 3 days, our kids will get infected within a few weeks. So we need to do anything in our power everywhere to vaccinate kids everywhere, not only in our countries, everywhere, and try to protect them from harm. And also, for a kid to have long COVID, even the milder kind of long COVID, is much more serious than for an adult to have long COVID. Think about it. The adult already had a chance to live a life, and in so many ways, he make his own choices. The kid doesn't make the choices. His parents telling him to go to school, he's going to school. And you think about kids in the UK, for example, that are forced to go to school, where their papas do not even wear masks, and kids that came from families with family members that are PCR positive are not even isolating and coming to school as usual. I can't really, I don't sleep at night thinking about this. So at least in Israel, we try better than that, but not enough. One in 5 to at least 1 in 5 kids in Israel got infected with coronavirus. I see this as a major failure. I think that we will suffer for this failure for years to come. And I only hope that we will be able to vaccinate as many kids as possible before the Omicron wave, and that we will learn our lesson for the next pandemic, and maybe even leverage the knowledge and the experience from this pandemic to actually get rid of other things that we just allow to roam the human populations without a reason. For example, from 4 kinds of seasonal flu, we probably almost by mistake got rid of 1 kind, just by trying to prevent coronavirus from circulating in the world. So we only have now 3 kinds of. Nowhere in the world it was seen. There is one kind of flu from the main 4 like seasonal flu that were not recognized globally since the middle of 2020. So maybe we got rid of it. I mean, it was circulating human populations for so many years, and we just got rid of it. We should think seriously about trying to get rid of other flu viruses, human flu viruses as well.
Have you followed Sweden at all? I work as a teacher in Sweden. I'm the only masked person in a school of 1,100 people. Nobody else wears a mask. There's everybody has to go to school. You're not allowed to keep your kids away from school. There's no HEPA filters. There's no screening. There's no carbon dioxide meters. We have had nothing, and over 40% of Swedish children have been positively tested to COVID. So that probably means we've got about 60% of our kids in Sweden infected, and they're just denying that there's even long COVID here. So I think we're going to have a major problem in our country. It's tragic.
And you also have a serious outbreak now in Malamo. I'm telling you, it's going to be, you're going to see a serious outbreak, because wastewater monitoring show a huge jump, I think threefold in Malamo. So
that's where I live.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, one thing Sweden did get right was limiting gathering. Sweden for many months in 2020, in the early months of 2020, Sweden for many months just permanently limited gatherings to up to 50 people inside or outside. And I think that this is a very effective tool, because once you have no exceptions, you got a number and no exceptions, then people will just get used to it. And it's limiting the spread, because you cannot have a serious super spreader event when you limit gatherings to 50 people. It's like you're capping the risk of one event, and this means a lot. It means a lot, and I think that we should follow this example by setting a very simple, very wide gathering restriction until we manage to vaccinate all kids. Hopefully at the early months of 2022.
But you do realize that exception was totally for schools, so that 50 gatherings did not include schools at all. So it was still 1,000 people in my school and there was no limitations whatsoever. No masking, no nothing. So sometimes Sweden says, oh, we're doing the same as the rest of the world, but they're actually not. I mean, we're back to a limit on gatherings again, but not unless, if you're vaccinated, it's free, open to go to as many gatherings as you want and as big as you want, several thousand.
I think Omicron will change that, because vaccine passports at the era of Omicron, in my opinion, it seems like they will be irrelevant. Because if we, with protection from infection and transmission against Omicron, it's pretty low.
And Mayor, Wendy has been asking outstanding questions, but maybe we can let a few other people ask questions as well. Would someone like to ask a question? We're already over time in terms of our usual schedule, but let's see who would like to ask a question. Please unmute if you have a question.
Meir, what is the status of HEPA in schools at this time?
Where in Israel?
Yeah.
So we installed the first 1,000 units in the last 2 weeks, and hopefully we will be able to install tens of thousands more HEPA filters in the next 3 months.
Wonderful.
The goal is to get a HEPA filter in every class in kindergarten in Israel as fast as possible.
Okay, Jane, you had a question?
I just wondered if Israel has a explicit zero COVID policy and whether the population are accepting of that. Because I know where in Australia it's been abandoned and elimination's become a dirty word. So I just wondered how politicized it is in Israel, and if you have any suggestions about reclaiming sort of a zero COVID approach or rebranding it, or I don't know. It's just seems like it's we can't talk about it.
So Yaneer did his best for most of 2020 and the first parts of 2021, trying to convince policymakers in Israel to adopt a zero COVID policy. We had some major success on theory, on paper, but not in practice. And during the Delta wave, even the politicians that supported zero COVID before the wave thought that now vaccines will save us. It was a deadly mistake. We lost over 1,700 people to coronavirus at the era of like available, effective, safe vaccine. I think that we need to concentrate first on the basic, and then once we manage using these basic methods, we manage to get coronavirus under control, then it's much easier to accept the idea of elimination.
Right.
Because, for example, now we talk about Omicron. In the US, you have a Delta wave. In Israel, we have a Delta wave. We had last week, we had a day with more than 800 positive cases. Next to zero of them were Omicron. We know because we screen all positive cases in Israel now for Omicron, all of them. So we had 800 cases of Delta in a country of 9.4 million people a day. It's a lot with R on higher than 1. So we had a Delta wave in a country that give like boosters, give shots to anybody who wants it above 12 for months now. So vaccine-only strategy will not work. But once we will use HEPA filters, we will use better masks, we will use cleaning the air in other ways, we will use limiting gatherings for a while, and then we will get the virus under control. Once that happens to a certain level of what is called endemicity, an accepted level of people getting infected all the time, then it's much easier to tell people, listen, we keep the coronavirus at bay with like 100 to 300 infections a day. With a pretty mild effort, we can get it down slowly. Just like that, instead of 200 cases a day, we will have 100. And then for a while, 50. And then for a while, 10. It's much easier to accept this and to accept that in countries that do not control 800 cases a day and already is on the verge of an Omicron wave, now we will get it to zero and we will keep it at zero. So, and also I think that we need a clear winner. And New Zealand and Taiwan are getting there pretty fast, but they're not there yet fully. Once, for example, New Zealand will be able to vaccinate everybody there, everybody, kids half a year and up to 100-year-old, the less, like the oldest person in New Zealand. Once they will achieve that and open the borders and control and like open the economy and still manage to keep coronavirus at bay, then other countries will say, okay, so we paid a very dear price for not following this earlier, but now we can mimic New Zealand. For example, if New Zealand keeping cases on under 10 cases a day in community transmission, we can do that as well. Okay, we can keep this at minimal at bay. We can keep the coronavirus at bay, and I really believe that it's possible.
Yeah. So one thing that we might point to also, Meir, before we close, it is late, and people are welcome to stick around. But it is worth pointing at what Japan has done, because by doing a vaccine plus strategy of vaccination plus masking, diligent masking, plus ventilation in public places, plus travel controls, which you have pointed out is super important. And now with the additional control over the Omicron coming into the country, they've only had travelers and not domestic transmission so far. They are at 1 case per million. And if they, in principle, they can, and hopefully they will, though we don't know that they will, can achieve elimination, it will, I think, serve as an example that could be emulated by others. Is there any other, and there are other countries, there's a very large number of countries that are low in cases now. People don't talk about them because why should we talk about places that are being successful? You know, it's a real good question. The answer is we should, and we can learn from them. Other quick questions. Why don't we take one more question if someone has it? Well, if we don't, we've gone about 2.5 times longer than we usually.
I see a hand there. Yes, Joe.
Go ahead. Joe?
How did you get the politicians to pay attention to your ideas?
So 10 years ago, I formed a think tank. I'm the executive director of a think tank that now employ almost 200 people in Jerusalem. So my work is to advise the government about policy. And we had a national security project that opened in 2019. And we did like a training just for ourselves, a training. Let's assume that a pandemic starts somewhere. How do we respond? So during the training, we found out that there is a pandemic starting somewhere. So we're still in the training. In the last 2 years, we are still doing this training for how we should react for a pandemic. So we will actually be able to warn Israeli government on January 2020, that we will better control the borders. And the first wave in Israel was very mild, relatively. We got, in the worst day, we had 700 cases, less than like the worst day of last week when we are like between waves. And we had around 300 people dying of coronavirus in the whole of the first wave. Until June 2020, we had only 300 people dying. After that, we got a hibis and we moved on to allow us have to lose control 3 times. But in general, when you work in policy, it's just a matter of of advising about a different policy, about a different issue. But I have the tools and I have the researchers. Just a small example. We needed a excess mortality index because when you want to advise about policy, you want to know what is working, and many countries do not really report this properly. So we created an internal database about excess mortality. A guy named Ariel Karlinsky, who is incredible researcher, and he created such an amazing database that now Financial Times and Economist and World Health Organization, they all use Kohelet database. The database Ariel Karlinsky created as a basic for the reporting of excess mortality around the world. So when you see the Financial Times amazing graphs of excess modality, or the Economist calculations, they are based on a real Kalinske work on an internal tool that we just went public after it was so effective that we wanted to share it with the world.
All right, let's all thank Meir very much. This is the second time he's come to our daily call, and it's always been amazing. I think we can stop the streaming. Mike, can you stop the streaming? Because then we can